Dear sociologists, psychologists, therapists, coaches, anybody who reads a lot of work on human behavior and power dynamics, and you're very well rounded and you consider yourself an intellectual and expert in this area, I have a question for you. Have you ever come across books or research studies that particularly articulates and explains human motivation and behaviors like this?
Dating apps. In a research study on interracial online dating, sociologists stumbled upon some shocking findings. Think your type is just personal preference? It's not. What you subconsciously find the most attractive is what will give you the most privilege through alliance in capitalism, patriarchy, and racism. So what does that mean?
Vicky Hu, the founder of Compatibility AI, is a former client of mine. She took my training program for about 9 months. As part of her growth process, she started this new app, Compatibility AI, which in the beginning I've supported and posted on my social media for her so she can gain more traction and users. Since it launched, it has morphed into something different. It started to show signs of emulating my work, which I have addressed. At which point, we tried to find a way to work together. Her proposal did not meet my expectations. In fact, it seemed to completely disregard the value of my ideas, which led her to leave my program. Now she's posting videos like this, claiming that it is based on Stanford research studies. Capitalism, patriarchy, and racism are not new concepts. They exist because this is a human condition. There are many studies done on this. This part I wholeheartedly agree. However, have you ever come across the way that I articulate the issue and how I use CPR, capitalism, patriarchy, and racism to evaluate, accurately and objectively assess a person's character, people's motivations, and understand the root of every single human problem? What I do best is taking complex concepts, packaging them into words that are easy to access for people who are not experts in the arena. Even for people who are experts in the arena, for example, a double certified therapist who had certification to practice in both US and Canada. Imagine how many books and research that this person had to read to get here. She was a narcissism expert, but when I told her about capitalism, patriarchy, and racism, power hierarchies, and how humans pursue power and privilege through relationships, that people consciously and subconsciously strategically align to gain more power and privilege, and the most problematic relationships are ones that have large power gaps based on CPR, capitalism, patriarchy, and racism, and her mind was blown. So maybe I'm full of ego, and I think that I've come up with an original way of articulating and teaching people, and perhaps I'm unreasonable. So I would like to know. Let me ask those of you who are highly educated and work in this arena. We subconsciously align to seek power and privilege based on capitalism, patriarchy, and racism, the three man-made hierarchies that rule humanity. Was this research that you came up easily that you could claim free territory? What appears to me in this scenario is exactly CPR. Someone who has shown me that my ideas are not that valuable is now using my exact words. Also using Stanford-backed research or referencing to some book to make it seem legitimate and credible, and also to avoid accountability because they're citing some kind of resource. What it seems to me in this scenario is being white labeled, taking a lesser known expert and intellectual like me, using my life's work to slap on some Stanford label to gain prestige and credibility from the public who will typically not ask any questions, and attempting to erase the original creator, me, while they reap the benefits. If I'm wrong, I am very much open to hearing it. So far, in my experience and conversations I've had with experts in this arena, have not given me any indication that the way I articulate and explain this concept, the capitalism, patriarchy, racism, power dynamics, and hierarchy container, isn't an original concept. Most experts who are willing to have a conversation with me had their mind blown. But if I'm wrong, I'm all ears. Tell me where you have seen this exact articulation in any research and books. I'd love to know.
When a woman betrays and exploits another woman, it's more than plain competition. When you truly understand the effects of capitalism, patriarchy, and racism and human motivation, behavior, and how people approach relationships, then you know women are often your biggest counterforces due to the pressures and the limitations that the patriarchy sets up against women. And if you're a woman of color, you betcha anything, it's gonna be another woman who looks like you or shares your experiences, your ethnic background, who won't be your best ally, but will be your best op. Women do not have communities, period, because the whole world sees women as a resource to leverage to gain more power and privilege. Internalized misogyny and internalized racism is seeing another woman who isn't at the top of the white supremacist and misogynistic hierarchy, and just based on the position that she is in the supremacy hierarchy, feeling the permission to exploit and steal from her. Particularly Asian women do not have a community at all. They have no solidarity with anybody. It's literally fend for yourself as an Asian woman, unless you're willing to be a subservient maid to the people around you, including to your family, your friends, and to Asian men in general. And obviously there's a racial tension between Asian women, especially light-skinned East Asian women, and the rest of women of color, because light-skinned East Asian women often try to align to white supremacy standards, white men typically less successfully with white women, in attempts to gain more privilege, to the point that they will chop off the hand that has once held them up when they really needed them. What they don't realize is that this further isolates them, because you cannot gain privilege by siding with the oppressor. And oftentimes, Asian women become very audacious at being disrespectful and exploitative towards other Asian women and other groups who are considered oppressed in the supremacist hierarchy, when they have perhaps found themselves a community where they feel like the oppressors are giving them permission, coaching them and mentoring them to act just like them. Internalized misogyny and internalized racism leads people to have no critical thinking skills, do any risk assessment, and think long term. Also, if there's so much disrespect towards oneself, it feels absolutely normal to be disrespectful to other women because they're women and because they're women of color, seeing these people as easy prey that can get away with replicating the white man's exploitation on them. So the worst competition that you experience, even jealousy attacks or betrayals, are going to come from those who were once oppressed, who want to be the best oppressor, so they don't have to feel oppressed again. Those who feel like they have successfully aligned with supremacism and privilege, but that is always an illusion and a self-sabotage, because what makes you think when you're not at the top of the hierarchy that these supremacists are going to be okay with you taking power as an Asian woman or woman of color? That betrayal is coming soon. People with that weak mindset always get humbled because they miscalculate risks and privilege. And third, these types of people can never have community because of their ego and condescension. They're just plain uncharismatic. Now, here's the challenge for me as a coach. I see these issues in people almost automatically, immediately when I meet them and I interact with them. However, I can't kick out every single client who has these types of issues because sometimes they have never been shown another way to relate to people. They may have desire to improve. So I have to let some of these relationships play out and see, but I do flag people from very early on, and this is not an exceptional case. I have flagged this person from very early on, and I need to see how this unfolds. I need to know if anxious social behaviors are just anxiety or low charisma habits because they lacked social interaction and training, or that anxiety is just a symptom of trying to hide their guilt stemming from ulterior motives. This is also why it is much easier to not help the oppressed. One thing I can say for sure is that if somebody will attempt to cut off the hand that has tried to help them up and has held them up to some level, this person is an opportunist who will do it to anyone at any given moment as long as the opportunity presents itself.
Based on what's happening around the world and where we are at in human history, it is really important for every single one of you to consider how your smallest actions contribute as a part of the problem or the solution. The forces of capitalism, patriarchy, and racism become even stronger when you're in business. And as a woman of color in business, it's always women who try to powergasm, steal my content, steal my ideas, and parade it as their own. Last year, when the intellectual property lawyer copied my content word for word, it was one of you who found it first and sent it to me. I oftentimes get reports like this, some influencer or creator copying my work and not crediting me. There's also a married anti-patriarchy influencer that has become very, very popular who used to be one of my followers. She used to comment and learn from me, but all of those comments are gone now. People who devalue women's work are patriarchally minded individuals. They're male centering pygmies. They care a great deal about status, image, being elite, and it doesn't matter at what cost. They turn to women, especially women of color, when they have lost a battle or a war against a narcissist or the system tremendously, when they need their wounds validated and comforted. And then once they start to feel better, they get very much inspired to strike the person that has held them up. When someone shows you who they are by displaying these kinds of characters, this has nothing to do with neurodivergence or I didn't know better. All of this is very intentional. Be careful who you support because these types of people, even if you're just giving them likes or you're downloaded their app, you're giving them some kind of validation and powergasm, they will leverage that energy that you give them, then poison this world with the leverage that they gained. Many of you have asked me, how can I support you better? After you have seen that my former client, who has worked with me for 9 months, is now openly and audaciously using my language and parts of my teaching to sell her app without crediting me. And when addressed, gaslighting that her work is based on some prestigious elitist sociology research. When Vicky Hu was first creating her compatibility AI app, it was a different product and I supported her. I posted and sponsored for all of you to download and give it a try. Now that she has evolved and has shown who she really is, if you'd like to support me, please, you don't have to do much more than to go into the app and delete your account. There are many gray areas of ethics when it comes to business, not against the law, but it will be considered unethical. If somebody shows unethical behaviors towards one person, can you really trust your data with that person? After all, a business is strongly shaped by the founder's value system. In addition, if you have followed the Compatibility AI account, if you have liked any of those videos, unfollow and unlike those videos. In a world like this, everyone has to realize that every corrupt leader that we have seen, every corrupt wealthy person, had plenty of tiny little sources of energy that have enabled and supported them to get there. Your part matters and you have power as a consumer. How you consume content, what you like, and what kind of algorithm you boost. Even when it's free, you're still a consumer and you're giving them something. All your assets, your time, energy, focus, your data, all of that is your power. They are your assets that you need to gatekeep and make sure you channel towards the world that you want to create to become the part of the solution, not the problem.